Well, well, well. By which I mean welcome back. Hi. So, we're back in my own little pocket dimension, and of course this means that we are going to be going over more units in Fire Emblem Heroes because a lot of people were asking, and this time we actually have a kind of theme around this one, and that one is the new focus summon, Family Bonds. That means the twins, Seliph, and Julia. So we're going to be going over those guys right now. Let's head on in, let's get the elements up, and let's get ready. So I guess I'll just be pretty obvious. There are no color lists this time around, so we're going to be skipping that and going straight to red, where, of course, because, you know, main characters and blue hair, that of course means there's a billion sword units, so let's start off with Erika. Now, Erika and her brother kind of have this weird sort of theme going on, but, I mean, that'll become more apparent as we go along. Right now, though, let's talk about her weapon, and that is Sieglinde. And what Sieglinde does is it grants adjacent allies 3 attack every turn for that turn. So, essentially, she's very good at buffing right out of the gate. And outside of buffing with her weapon, she also, of course, has skills, and her command skill is... Oh lord, it's Pivot. Okay, well... Well, Pivot, basically what it does is it allows her to move to the opposite side of an adjacent ally. We will be talking about this one a bit later in the pros and cons, but Pivot, it's there, it exists. So let's move on to passive, shall we? And the first one is Drag Back, which is odd, but also kind of interesting. What this does is, essentially when she attacks, she will then move backwards a square, and then in the square she previously was in will be the enemy that she attacked. Essentially, she could bring enemies in to do more damage with ranged units, which could be quite useful. And then, of course, she has Hone Speed, which is, well, I mean, it's like every other Hone ability or Fortify ability. At the start of every turn, she grants 2, 3, or 4 speed based on her rank, and, well, I mean, that's always useful to have around, especially for an attacking unit. And from here, we move on to pros and cons, and we're going to discuss something that's kind of relevant with her, as well as some of the problems that she might have. So, first off and foremost, Erika has somewhat good stat gains. She has pretty good attack, decent speed, and some moderately good defense and resistance. The thing here is that she is definitely more of a support attacker than, say, an actual attacker. She can go in there, mess up some units, but mostly what really propels her to the top is her buffs. She can buff speed and attack at the start of every turn, meaning more damage or more or less hits. And that is great. Make no mistakes, Erika is great if you get her, but there's also some cons that come with it. They're not big, but they can be noticeable. Now, this one's going to probably sound a bit rude, but the real reason here is that she has no real command skill. Pivot, in all honesty, is okay. It's not great. I mean, it's cool to be able to move through your units, but you expend your turn when you do that, and outside of certain maps, it's not useful. And usually, you don't end up on those maps. Not only that, but Drag Back also has that same sort of problem. It can be useful for setting up units if you have the right team, but you're going to find it quite hard to actually work it in there without, say, a ranged unit. So be careful with her when it comes down to that. She might not be that useful. You may find yourself wanting to use more red units that have an actual usable command skill, like, say, Olivia with Dance, or perhaps Leo with his AoEs. It's just more up to you in this situation. She's useful, she's good at buffing, she's very strong. But outside of that, she does have a few weaknesses, like any unit. Alright, and that's pretty much the end of Erika, so I guess it's time to move on to another blue-haired swordsman, and that would be Seliph. And oh boy, do we have a lot to go over with him. So less about blue hair, more about weapons, shall we? Tearfing is his weapon, and what it has is a unique trait that gives him +4 defense if his health is less than or equal to 50%. Moving on from that, we'll just take a look at his abilities, and the first thing he has for his command skill is Rally Speed. And Rally Speed, well, it just grants +4 speed to an adjacent ally for a turn. Next up is HP Plus, and that grants 3, 4, and 5 HP to his max. And considering he has a pretty high potential for health, it can work out. And then we have Brash Assault, where he makes a follow-up attack if his health is below 30, 40, and 50%, and attacking a foe that can counter. Okay, whew, we got through that, and now it's time to move on to pros and cons. And, well, let's start off with the pros, and that is that Seliph here has very high HP and attack stats, which makes him pretty useful at getting in there and doing damage when he can. So that's a plus. He of course also has his rally buff, which does help. That means that even when he can't get in there and attack, he can at least buff an ally who can, so hopefully that will be useful to some extent. But I guess we should probably look at the cons for him as well, and I'll be quite honest, he has a few, and they kind of make him a little bit less viable when it comes to being in the field. You see, right from the get-go, he has a lot of health, which is, it's fine. It means that he can be in there more often. The problem, however, comes that his resistance and his speed are very low. I mean, not terribly low, but pretty low. And basically it means he won't be doing a lot of attacks, and he'll also be constantly at fear of being one-shot by blue mages, which means that he can essentially die fairly quickly. Not only that, but as his HP starts to drop down, he's supposed to gain more advantages. But here's the problem that comes with this. His sword adds defense when he's below 50%. His counterattack ability is supposed to go up as his HP drops, but the problem here is that HP is already getting lower by the second, and that means that he's going to be entering battles that either A, he's going to get in, do damage, kill the unit, or B, get in, do damage, and then possibly die before he can actually get his counterattack off, which doesn't really help him. It just doesn't, and I'll be pretty honest here, he is not the best red unit when it comes down to it. You could fill the spots better with, say, Ryoma, Leo, Lucina, Roy. All of these might be better than him because they have abilities that will essentially do more work for them than any of what he has on his skill set. By no means am I saying that he's terrible. No. He has good health and he has good attack. He will do a lot of damage. But this is the example of a character who has good stats being kind of murked up by the fact that his skill set is not the best it can be. And that's the unfortunate truth with Seliph, is that he's cool, he looks cool, he has good stat gains, but he lacks the skill setup that honestly he deserves. But now it's time to move on to a different color, and that would be blue. Ooh, fancy. And of course, it also means that we're moving on to Erika's brother, who is the only blue unit in this update, and that is Ephraim. Now again, remember I said they're brother and sister, they share the same sort of theme, and in this case, it's in their weapon, and this time it's Sigmund, and well, it grants the exact same effect that Sieglinde does, and that is +3 attack to all adjacent allies at the start of every turn. Now, where the twins differ is probably in their abilities, and let's start off with his special skill, New Moon and Moon Bow. And what these two skills do is they reduce defense and res by 30% based on that action, meaning that he'll do more damage during that attack. And if you're familiar with Luna at all from the original games, which by the way is also in Heroes, you'll get the same sort of idea basically. It's just a reduced version of it. And then we move on, of course, to his passive skills, and this clearly shows that he's supposed to be the adverse of Erika in a way, where she was all about buffing, he's more about debuffing. Seal Defense, of course, lowers defense by 3, 5, and 7 after combat. To add on to that even more, he also gains access to Threatened Defense, which lowers defense by 3, 4, or 5 based on rank to foes within 2 spaces around him at the start of each turn. So those are all of his abilities. I think it's fair enough to move on to pros and cons now, shall we? And I'll give you my final idea of what exactly Ephraim's all about. So let me just start off by saying that Ephraim is definitely very high on the attack list. He does have some pretty high attack stats. He also has some pretty good health stats, although not the best. But what Ephraim really excels at is debuffing. He can get in there, do damage, and then reduce defenses not only by attacking, of course, but also by just, well, being around the units. When he's there and he's able to sustain himself, he will do a lot to help your team out. Add to the fact that he essentially has a lesser version of Luna on a lower cooldown, it means that he will be doing quite a bit of damage when he gets in there to do it. Not only that, of course, red meta, meaning there's more red units, he'll probably be pretty good at just destroying the enemy lines. But as for cons, I really see that there might be a problem when it comes down to resistance. He's quite low on that. He's also quite low on speed, meaning that he won't be attacking multiple times, unless of course he gets buffed. So don't expect him to be busting out Moonbow every fight, mostly because of his speed, but still, I would say his versatility, his buffs, and his debuffs make up for his shortcomings overall. Not only that, but he's probably one of the better summons you can get with his focus. Now, however, it's probably time to put him to rest and move on to the last unit that comes with this focus summon and the only mage in green that you can get this go around, and that would be Julia. Alright, so let's just hop on in and get straight to Naga, her weapon. And what Naga does is that, well, it grants defense and res +2 when the unit is attacked. Not only that, but it also is effective against dragons, which is kind of strange to have a ranged dragon killer, but I mean, I'm not complaining, it's interesting, I'll go with that. To add on to that, she also has the special action Dragon Gaze and Dragon Fang, which grants an additional 30 or 50% attack based on which rank you have. Moving on from there, we also of course have Resistance, and, well, it does what it says on the tin. It grants a buff of resistance, 1, 2, or 3 based on rank. I mean, what more do you want? Outside of that, she also has Breath of Life, which when she initiates an attack, after the damage has been done and the combat is over, she will grant 3, 5, or 7 HP to units around her, meaning that she kind of has this supportive effect as well. Just, again, I said it kind of reminds me of Lindy, but not as strong, not as strong. Still though, Julia is an interesting character, and she has her own pros and cons as well, so I guess we'll talk about that now, shall we? So, for pros, she has a pretty decently strong attack, as well as res, which means that she'll be dealing a lot more magical damage, but also taking less. She's not exactly the strongest mage out there, but she does have efficiency when it comes to hitting. Add to the fact that she has a slight healing when attacking, it does benefit it a bit. I'm not saying she's going to be healing the whole group, but, you know, it does help. Every little bit helps. We also have this niche kind of example, but hey, it's still something. She can kill dragons reliably faster. I don't think any dragon units are essentially a huge threat to her, but I mean, it is nice to have options, so why not? But remember I always said I had Lindy kind of feelings with this, like it's just deja vu all over again. Mostly because, well, Julia has terrible defense, terrible. She will die if so much as a melee comes up and taps her. So of course be careful around archers and anyone who might have a counter ability, because, well, she won't handle that very well. She also lacks speed, which means that the multiplier won't be as high, so unfortunately she won't be attacking as often. However, all in all, Julia is a strong unit. She's not going to break the bank in any way, but she's probably the most straightforward unit you can get out of these summons. And considering that we have Seliph on one side and Julia on the other, she came out alright, and she has the ability to deal damage, which is what you want. She won't be doing AoE damage like some of the other mages, but hey, you get what you get, and she's definitely useful. Alright, and with all those characters out of the way, it's now time to move away with the elements as well, and consider a new possibility. But no, really. I'm just gonna say this right now, since I can. A lot of people were kind of disappointed that these characters weren't really powerful, you know, like Omega powerful, better than the units that we have right now, and I don't believe that's a good idea to go along with that, because right now the game's just come out, the first update, you know, we're not gonna have a huge change in the first few updates. We're gonna get units that are complementary, newer, different skills, you know, function differently, have themes, things like that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that we're not going to have this massive change to the power scales or meta right away. We kind of are already in that meta, and it's just going to be stuck like that for probably a few months. So again, Intelligent Systems knows what they're doing, so hopefully we'll get a better idea as the months go along. But until then, I'm here, and I'm always talking, and I'm always looking at units, and I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I want to thank you for watching. No, really, check out some of our other content. We do a lot of great things here on this channel. I like to think we're funny, but you know what? I don't know. So, anyways, let me think real quick. Oh yes, thanks for watching. Leave a like if you can. Also check out, our other stuff. Special thanks to our patrons, especially those who've stuck with us through all of this long, long time. And I love you guys, and we'll catch you later.